My sister lived rent-free in our grandmother's house. But when I needed a place, I was told to figure it out. Years later, they begged me for help, and I gave them the same answer. I was 29 when everything finally came to light, and looking back now, I can pinpoint exactly when the entire situation started to rot from the inside out. It wasn't one dramatic moment, and it wasn't even a loud confrontation. Instead, it was the slow build of years of favors, responsibilities, and a family dynamic that always seemed to place the weight on my shoulders while handing comfort and privilege to my sister. For context, my grandmother passed away a few years before all this truly exploded. She was a tough woman, the kind of grandmother who believed in hard work, discipline, and loyalty to family. She didn't tolerate laziness, and she certainly didn't like people taking advantage of others, which made the way things turned out even more ironic. When she died, she left behind a modest house. It wasn't huge, and it definitely needed repairs, but it was a home filled with memories, warmth, and the kind of history you can't put a price on. Now here's where the story gets complicated. My sister ended up living in that house. Not because she bought it, not because she worked hard to earn it, and certainly not because she paid rent. No, she was allowed to live there completely rent-free. The reason? According to my parents, she needed it more. My sister had always been seen as fragile, as someone who struggled too much with life's challenges, and my parents believed she deserved extra help. I, on the other hand, was always branded the responsible one, which meant that I was expected to stand on my own 2 feet no matter what, while she got a safety net spread beneath her at all times. First, I didn't complain. I truly believed that maybe it was fair. Maybe she did need more help than I did. After all, I had a steady job, I paid my bills on time, and I was careful with my money. But as the months turned into years, the bitterness grew. My sister lived comfortably without ever worrying about rent or utility bills, while I was breaking my back every month just to keep a roof over my own head. Every time I asked about it, my parents would say something like, "She'll get on her feet eventually," or "You're stronger, you'll be fine." But here's the truth. I wasn't fine. When I was 31, I ended up needing a place to stay. My apartment building was sold to a new owner who decided to renovate everything and jack up the rent to prices I couldn't afford. I was suddenly faced with the possibility of not having a home. I went to my family, thinking that maybe after all the years I supported myself without asking for much, they might finally offer me some kind of support. After all, my sister was still living in my grandmother's house rent-free. Surely, there was enough space for me to crash there temporarily until I got back on my feet. But when I brought it up, the answer wasn't just no, it was much worse. My parents looked at me, completely serious, and said, "You'll have to figure it out. That's not your house. That's her place. She needs stability." I remember sitting there in absolute shock. Stability? What about my stability? What about all the years I worked myself to the bone without ever asking for help? What about the countless times I paid for family groceries, chipped in for emergencies, and took on the role of the dependable one? Suddenly, none of that mattered. In their eyes, my needs were invisible. And my sister? She just sat there smugly silent. Not a word of offering. Not a hint of sympathy. She didn't even suggest letting me stay for a short time. It was as if the entire family had made some silent agreement that I didn't deserve the same consideration she did. That moment burned into my memory. But here's the thing about life. Time has a way of turning the tables. Fast forward a few years. By then, I had managed to build myself back up. I worked tirelessly, took extra shifts, and eventually landed a position that paid well enough to not only keep me secure but also start saving. I bought my own house, a modest one at first, but it was mine. And unlike my sister, I earned every square inch of it. Meanwhile, my sister's rent-free lifestyle started to catch up with her. She never learned responsibility, never built a career, and never saved a dime. She drifted from one part-time job to another, always complaining that life was unfair, while still enjoying the safety net of living rent-free. But that safety net eventually started to fray. The house, old and neglected, began to fall apart. The roof needed repairs, the plumbing was a disaster, and the property taxes, which she ignored, started to pile up. She went crying to my parents, of course, and for a while, they helped. But they were retired by then, and their finances weren't as strong as they used to be. Slowly, the weight of responsibility shifted onto her, and she had no idea how to carry it. And that's when it happened. One afternoon, I got a call. It was my sister, her voice dripping with desperation. She said the house was falling apart, that she couldn't afford the taxes or repairs, and that if she didn't get help soon, she might lose everything. For a moment, I just listened. I could hear the panic in her voice, the same panic I felt years earlier when I needed a place to stay. But unlike her, I hadn't been given a handout. I had to fight my way out of that situation alone. So when she finally asked me if I could help, maybe by covering the taxes or lending her money, I gave her the exact same answer she once allowed my parents to give me. You'll have to figure it out. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. She tried again, this time crying, saying that she had nowhere else to turn. But I stayed firm. I reminded her of that day years ago when I asked for help and she sat there quietly while our parents told me to figure it out. I told her that I did figure it out, and it made me stronger. Now it was her turn. Needless to say, she was furious. She screamed. She called me heartless. She even tried to get our parents to convince me to help. But this time, they couldn't. They were too old, too tired, and honestly, I think they finally realized how unfairly they had treated me all those years. In the end, my sister lost the house. She had to move into a small apartment she could barely afford, and for the first time in her life, she finally faced the harsh reality of what it means to live without a constant safety net. Do I feel guilty?
Honestly, no.
Because I learned something vital from that entire experience. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't keep carrying people who refuse to learn how to walk on their own. I was forced to struggle alone, and while it nearly broke me at times, it also built me into someone strong, independent, and capable. My sister, on the other hand, took the easy way out for too long, and when life finally demanded strength, she had none to give. And so, I walked away with my head high, because in the end, karma has a way of evening the score. If you liked this story, please subscribe for more.